you move on to the next thing. But I think with police and firefighters and EMS, sometimes your batteries are never fully recharged. You know what I mean? Because you're on that constant like roller coaster, and you just go from one thing to the next, and you kind of you bounce back and forth.
You've arrived at the Mental Health Spotlight podcast with therapist Kais. Thank you for being willing to have this conversation.
Sure, no problem.
I appreciate you coming to talk about this and educating me, because I don't know that much about mental health and first responders. I just started a series. I've interviewed a few firefighters, so I'm looking forward to getting it from the police department angle. But can you tell us a little bit, the audience, about who you are and what your role has been as a first responder, or whatever language you want to use, police officer, chief? I'm not sure what you do.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, I've been in law enforcement for 31 years now, and I've been in
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been a rewarding career. I've been blessed. I've worked for two excellent agencies. Last 6 years, I've been in Hudson as the chief of police. Prior to that, I spent 25 years with the Cuyahoga Falls Police Department. I left there as a captain in charge of special operations with SWAT, K9, firearms, all that kind of stuff. But had worked in the Falls. I had worked pretty much every division and bureau that you could: detective bureau, narcotics, patrol division. So I've had a excellent career, and have gotten to do a lot of different roles.
That's great. And so your current role is the chief, which in my ignorance is the head guy, right? You're the head guy there in Hudson.
Yes, I'm the head guy.
You're a good person to know.
Good and bad. Yeah.
Right? So. Yeah, exactly. Well, and it sounds like your experience then will be able to shed a lot of light on mental health and what you might see in your profession. I guess just kind of starting off right with it, what are some things you see either with yourself or with your team that has to do with anxiety or mental health? Like, what are some of the big pieces that show up in people you work with?
Well, I guess in general, I would say, again, being in this career field for 31 years, things have changed drastically. I couldn't give you a time frame when they started to change, but we really didn't talk about there wasn't a lot of talk about mental health or mental health issues in safety forces. When I started, going back, even maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago for sure. Before that, you really didn't have a lot of conversations about this stuff. Typically, as a patrol officer, if you were having problems, you were told, the department has an EAP program. The cities usually have EAP programs that you can reach out to. So it wasn't that there wasn't any resources, but it was pretty much, a standard. If you're having issues, contact the EAP. And then as a supervisor, I became a sergeant, then lieutenant, and worked my way up through the ranks. Then, you were told that's what you would advise staff. If somebody's having a problem, you tell them, contact the EAP, system. And really that was about the extent of it. There was almost a stigma. You didn't, officers and rank and file, they didn't want to, say that they were having a problem because it wasn't really talked about. It wasn't really accepted, I guess. So, I think for me, you just dealt with it. You just kind of kept it to yourself. You locked it away and you went on with your day. And I think things have changed drastically. I'd say the last 5 years, significant changes. And I'm not saying every department, but industry wide, I would say that it's definitely changed, over the last 5 years. And there was some improvement before that, but really seen a big push over the last 5 years, I'd say, for mental health with first responders.
And excuse me. And what's interesting about that is 5 years ago was COVID. Do you think that played a role in some of that dynamic, or did it maybe seem a product of something else?
I don't know. I mean, here's the thing: is police officers, firefighters, paramedics. I mean, they're just people, So I definitely think, if you look at society in general, mental health. I mean, what we respond to as police officers, and again, the same thing with firefighters and paramedics. we've seen a huge increase again over the last 10 years, 5, 6 years, even more. But a lot of the things we're responding to have mental health aspects. You got people, experiencing, crisis. And a lot of times, there's no one else to call. So we end up getting called. So I think we're just part of the societal, issues. We're just, we experience the same stuff as everybody else, sometimes even
Absolutely.
more because we're not only dealing with our own things, but we're having to deal with other people's episodes as well.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up. And that was an angle I wasn't even thinking about, is that as the mental health world changes in general, you get more of it on your doorstep. So you're dealing with it as people. Thank you for clarifying, right? You're just humans like me and everyone else, but then you're also helping people like me at the same time and having to learn how to handle crisis that might look different. So that's got to be daunting at times.
Yeah, it can be draining. And again,
Yeah.
I'm not the guy that goes out and responds to the calls. I will, obviously, if there's some type of major incident, but generally I'm in an office setting and I have other
Yeah.
responsibilities. But the patrol officers, the uniform patrol officers, detectives, they're the ones that are responding, as first responders on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And again, the number one increase in calls for service that we deal with in one way or another are usually people experience some type of crisis,
Wow.
mental health issues over the last several years.
That's really telling because you're seeing it from a broad stroke. And and that's just an angle that other people wouldn't see because you're right there on the forefront. And when I worked with, I've interviewed a few firefighters, and they kind of said the same thing. A lot of times people are calling because they're in some crisis that may or may not be a first responder
Yeah, it might not be a
job.
traditional, even for like a medic, it might not be a traditional medical call, like your traditional, your broken leg or
Right.
the house is on fire, the kitchen caught on fire. Yeah, a lot of stuff it revolves around these mental health issues that we're seeing. And I don't know if COVID, going back to your question, I don't know if COVID had anything to do with it, but I've definitely, since COVID, there's been a noticeable increase. Again, I couldn't tell you whether, we'd be at the same place with or without COVID, but I'm sure it didn't help.
Right. Yeah. And those of us that work in mental health field have seen dynamics and changes and increases in so many things. So there's something going on in the
Yeah.
water, perhaps. You mentioned that you're seeing things maybe you didn't see before and more of it. Do you get more training? And how I didn't even think I was going to ask you this. I hope it's okay to throw it in there. What kind of training do you get or do your patrol officers get to handle this?
Yeah. So actually, we do, at least at my agency. And again, I know I'll talk a little bit in general terms, but then I'll also specifically talk about my agency that I'm at, because I can tell you, it varies greatly right across
Right.
the state. There is mandatory. The state has made some CIT type training mandatory, and then each individual agency then will either add more, to their training hours on their own. And I know we do quite a bit here. So I think, yeah, training has definitely changed with dealing with the mental health crisis.
Yeah.
Because of the increase in calls, I think it's important to keep up on officer training with that. We try and have all of our officers here at our department receive. There's a 40-hour block of what they call CIT training to deal with specifically for mental health crisis issues.
Wow.
We try and send as many officers as we can. Our goal is to have every single officer on the agency certified as CIT certified officers.
Hmm.
And that's our goal. So anytime we hire somebody, we try and get them into the training courses. Again, there's limited availability sometimes with the courses, and it takes time. But
Yeah.
that's my goal here, and then we'll do stuff in house as well with training for things that we see here
Yeah.
internally. So yeah, we definitely do increased mental health training.
And the way you said that, it sounded like it's not always consistent how much people are trained. So where you work, there's a focus on that that's maybe unique than other places. Like it doesn't sound like everyone has to have that many trained on the CIT.
Yeah, there's no requirement,
Hmm.
and so it's really up to the individual agency. as far as what their resources are and their availability, their ability, I guess, to send their staff. Again, the state does mandate certain courses every year, and there has been some courses related to that. My background's in training. Again, I came from my last agency. I was in charge of special operations, which encompassed like in-service training, basically all the training throughout the department. I was also an adjunct faculty for Kent State University for about 10 years, and I was an academy commander for them at the main campus. And so my background's in training. So I appreciate the importance of training. I think the better trained your staff is, the better they're able to not only cope themselves, but the better they're going to be able to serve the citizens of the community. So we really have a strong emphasis on training here. We do 40 hours of in-service training every year, where we pull all the officers off the shifts, and that's on top of any courses we send people outside to. But that in-service training also includes, every year for the last 3 years, there's been a component on mental health, not only for dealing with people in the community, but mental health for staff is another aspect that we started about 3 years ago. And we actually started a wellness program for the department, where I've got one of the lieutenants is actually our wellness coordinator. Mm-hmm. And then we trained peer support staff. We've sent them to get certified so that they can act as peer support. So what we did, we started with, we try to get volunteers from each level of the department. So, we've got a patrol officer, a supervisor, a dispatcher. That way, depending on who might be having an issue here, they have somebody that they probably feel comfortable going and talk to. You might not want to go to your sergeant. Mm-hmm. Then you work on a shift, it may just not feel comfortable. So we've established that, and we send them. Obviously, they have to go to a certain amount of training and stuff each year, and then we also do components in service training. So I'll give you some examples. And some of these are probably going to sound weird. Probably might even sound weird to other police departments, but we did I'll call it yoga, but we called it tactical stretching. So
I love it.
We brought a local yoga instructor in from the community that was willing to come in, and they basically went over some stretches and breathing exercises and stuff that would be beneficial for stress relief for staff. And the goal was, like, not everybody is going to buy into that particular component, right? Or maybe it's not beneficial for them, right? Again, we're all unique people and respond differently to things. But what I've been trying to do is bring different things in so that, there's probably something everyone can take away from different things. And so overall, if it benefits their overall mental and physical health. So we did the tactical stretching. Another year we did I taught a class on tactical breathing, and it's breath exercises specifically for stress relief. It's something that, again, depending on how you phrase it, you may not have buy-in, but this is something that they
smart.
do in yoga. But we use it for, like, snipers on SWAT teams. We'll use it. I've used it personally when I was on the SWAT team on the way to a call out, just to get centered and focused, and kind of clear your mind.
For your fight or flight response too. So, it helps you to regulate your fight or flight.
So, we did that one year. I'm trying to think, because we brought somebody else in. Again, for the last 3 years, we've had at least one component for staff, physical, mental health, wellness. Over the last 3 years, we brought people in to do some outside training with that. And overall, it's been the response has been pretty good, even from staff that was kind of like I'm not doing yoga, again. So we kind of changed the name of it. But and the lady that came in and did it for us was great. She knew she might have a tough crowd, but
right.
I got good feedback both from her and from staff. So again, may not be everybody's thing. Maybe they don't do it, all the time. We introduced.
But you expose them to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, if 2 people out of 40, it benefits them, that's great. Hopefully then another couple will benefit from something else. We're just trying to give them tools in the tool belt, rather than just saying, call the EAP if you're having issues. So these are things they can even do on their own. And we're looking for
Absolutely.
next year maybe to bring in a chiropractor, somebody that can teach stretching specifically maybe for police because of the gear that we wear, to explain what it does to, your body and how you can kind of alleviate, or a physical therapist, to help give them some ideas on different stretches and stuff they can do. So
I love
we're
the
trying
two
to do
tiers
different angles.
approach. I love the two tier because you're helping them help those of us that need help, but they're also helping themselves. And I just think that's great that you had the insight to do that. It sounds like you're doing something, and we'll talk later about how this could be advocacy for a broader use that not everyone's doing though. This sounds pretty curated from your passion. Is that true, or are other people doing what you're doing?
I would say that the people are doing components of what we're doing. I might be, obviously I'd like to think we're the tip of the spear.
The
We're at the
pioneers.
forefront, but I'm sure
Yeah.
there's other people doing similar things. But I do think that we're definitely doing more than a lot of places. And
Yeah.
again, that being said, is some places maybe don't have the resources that I have here.
Yeah.
I work in a community that, again, when you talk about mental health, the other sides of that is we have a lot of support. Our city council is very supportive with me and the police
With the
department,
money too.
with money if I need equipment, or stuff like that for facilities here. We have a weight room at our police department. That matter of fact, we've had support from our FOP, our the Blue Coats, which is a sport organization for police, and safety force, but they helped us with some stuff, and so we did a refurb of that. Basically, try to do it with not using a lot of city funds, and kind of refurbed it so people have a place to go. That's another thing, is we encourage our staff to work out. And I think, again, mental and physical wellness kind of sometimes go hand in hand. These can be very unhealthy jobs, not just mentally because of the stuff you're dealing with, but physically. For police officers, we're in the cars. 12-hour shifts. Staff here works for 12 hours. You're working out of a vehicle. If you're working nights, you're working 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. You're not natural for your body to be doing that. Not a lot of places open for healthy foods. So if you're not packing, you're eating, you're probably eating
Great point.
junk. So overall, there's a lot of negative health, physical and mental health stuff going on with law enforcement.
That's why you call it a wellness approach, right? It's the whole umbrella.
Yeah, so we're trying to do what we can to recognize that we want to keep our staff healthy, because the healthier they are, the less problems we're going to have with interactions with citizens, and they're going to be better able to help other people. So one of the things that we do, that I want to make sure I mention, is that
Please.
We've made it clear to staff that if they're having a bad day or they go on a traumatic call, that they're able to take a timeout, right? They can call a timeout if they need to come back to the station and decompress. Last thing I want is an officer going on a call that was something serious and traumatic, and they go straight from that to something else, and now they're taking that incident into the next one, into the interaction with another citizen. So we encourage our staff, if something like that happens, to take that time out, come back to the station. If they need to take the gear off, walk on the treadmill, sit in a quiet corner,
reset,
do some breathing, and do a reset. So, and I use super that. Smart. That's actually the terminology I use is a reset. And we'd rather have them do that than to have a bad interaction with one of our citizens.
That is fabulous. We all should be able to take a time out and go do legs up the wall in a dark room. So I love that you've incorporated that, and it's the culture, because it sounds like someone's going to ask for it because it's part of how you guys do it there.
Yeah, I think years ago, if somebody would have said, "Hey, I had a hard time on that call. Can I come on station for a half hour and get myself together? Honestly, and it was just the way it was. But I can imagine some of my sergeants, as a rookie officer, if I would have said that, the response I would have
Wouldn't have gone
got
over too well.
went over really well. And again, they
Just go
know.
wash your face.
Yeah. When I say that too, they know. I mean, they have to be ready for calls for service. Our staff's not coming in and lounging. But again, you're talking about when somebody recognizes that they're not in a position to help anybody else. We need them to take that reset break. And so
yes. And then they're mindful.
Yeah.
They're mindful. Also, you're kind of helping them be aware of themselves too, to say, "Ooh, I'm not okay right now," and that may be before people push through.
Yeah, and encouraging other staff, if you're working with somebody and you notice they're not,
great point.
They're not right for them to say something, and kind of maybe encourage them to go do that reset.
That's a great point, that you can help each other. And that takes me back to what you mentioned earlier that I'm still stuck on, is the peer support. Excuse me. We do that here. We do it for disordered eating. We do it in mental health. We do it in addiction. So the fact that you are creating in that wellness program peer supporters, that's innovative. That's super smart. And that kind of speaks to what you just mentioned too. I love it.
And it was great too. We actually, again, not knowing what the response from staff was going to be, we actually had quite a few volunteers who wanted to be peer supporters. A couple surprising, but I mean, I think qualified and good. But I wouldn't have probably guessed that they would be interested in doing that. So.
Yeah, these conversations have surprised me. People have come to me to talk in different first responder roles that it was hidden for so long. And now they're willing to get out there and say, listen, we all have this, like you mentioned, and let's help each other. And they're more verbal. And I think it's great that people are showing up. It's awesome. So I feel like you're creating a pilot in a way that, and I wonder if there's a way that you measure the efficacy of this, or that you could kind of sell it to other areas, even if they're under resourced, because I get that your area has to be able to support this, but I wonder if there's a way to spread this, because it sounds really smart.
I can tell you, and I told you that things have definitely changed. And so I'm a part of what's called the Summit County Chiefs of Police, and I believe each county probably has the same, similar group for their county. But the chiefs get together and we discuss topics. We also have people from other organizations that are members. So we have people from Blue Coats and the Attorney General's office and prosecutor's office. And I know, again, going back to the Blue Coats, I know they're one of the organizations in the area that are really trying to support first responders, and mental health has been a big issue for them. The Safety Forces Support Center here in Summit County is another organization. And so there are resources being put out and information on programs. And, I've discussed some of the stuff that we're doing here as a group. So the ideas are being shared. I don't know operationally, what every department's doing internally. Made me think of something, though, because you'd asked about COVID, and I just thought of this, and I really didn't even remember until just now, but when I talked about the resets, allowing staff to come in, that actually, I started that during COVID, because there was a lot of changes. Staff, we weren't going in, they were spending more and more time in the cars. We were basically, even here at the PD, we were isolated. So we weren't coming together for roll calls, because again, knowing what we know now, maybe we would have done things differently. But at the time, with the information that we had, we were really trying to limit contact with other human beings.
Of course,
right?
We needed you guys to stay healthy, you people.
Yeah. So, whether it was creative ways to handle calls for citizens, right? We were doing more stuff remotely. If we could take a report over the phone and didn't have to have contact, maybe not going and sitting down in the house with them, doing it outside. Things like that. And so staff here was isolated. And so that's where the reset stuff started. I'd put out a memo. It was probably before we started the actual official wellness program. Yeah. Probably a year or so before. I basically put out a memo telling them the criteria, and basically, again, you have to be prepared to respond to a call. You have to have your radio, but allowing them to come in and do those resets. And it was a way for them too to come in and, kind of get out of that car for a little. We encouraged a lot of park and walks too, at night businesses, again, to get some fresh air and stuff like that. And they were checking the businesses, which they still do. But that did come out of COVID originally.
Yeah, there's one of the benefits, and we've recognized here several mental health benefits to COVID. Like this right here, being able to talk to people virtually has been huge. And for you guys, maybe for your area, it was being able to incorporate some new initiatives. So it wasn't all bad. we're adapting. I also think what you've described is very preventive. And some of the conversations I've had with others have been about reactive approaches. So that means, what do you do once you're already in crisis? What do you do once you're having a mental health challenge? And I love that yours is preventive, because that's going to hopefully reduce the number of those. What if someone has a mental health crisis, someone you're working with, let's say, and they need to take a break or go somewhere? Is that still stigmatized? Do you have places where you suggest they go for help, or anything that's specific to police officers?
Yeah, again, we definitely have resources, and again, going back to even the EAP, we do have a good EAP program here. Again, it used to be kind of the only reference, but we do have that. The peer support, I think, is great internally, because a lot of times people don't, even though it's more acceptable. Again, I think in this line of work, probably even more than others, you kind of fight the internal, about going to see a therapist or something like that. Yeah. So at least you have people here that you can talk to, that because of their certifications and designations, it's confidential. You know what I mean? So they don't have to worry about that side of stuff. And so I think we've offered people that. We've even done equine therapy with horses, and I've sent staff. We've sent staff there. Voluntary. We've taken advantage of, there was some funding that had come through our area for that.
I did a podcast on that. It's such good stuff.
Those horses
and people.
Else. Hey, they're I'll tell you, man, there was, I went to one, and it was pretty neat, but the horses themselves are just such magnificent animals. I mean, and huge.
And intuitive. They just have this connection. Yeah.
So that kind of stuff. And, so we do have resources for where we also we'll do post incident. So we'll do critical incident debriefs, both on the side of, I guess, policy, procedure, and what could we do better, right? Could be safety things that okay, maybe next time we create a larger buffer, for the scene, things like that. But then we'll also do incident debriefs specifically for trauma, we've had there's incidents the officers go out on that one officer might be fine, and for whatever reason they're just able to deal with it, and everyone processes it different. But then you may have others that are really having a hard time, especially I always found things with children can be hard to deal with. And so we'll do, if we recognize that an incident is likely to have been traumatic. Again, we may not know personally, 99% of staff might have been fine on this call, but we don't know that, maybe the person had a traumatic incident when they were a child that was similar. We can't really do anything, not aware, right? But if we recognize that it's an event or an incident, a call that is likely, right, somebody's probably gonna have a hard time with this, then we will do we will set up a critical incident debriefing specifically for the mental health side of stuff, for the trauma, voluntary, and that is one that's not attended by like myself. Like I would be and probably run the critical incident debrief on the policy procedure side, stuff like that, but so that they feel comfortable, like the admin staff would not be involved in Southern. We would bring in like a group like Assist 77, who's another organization.
You bring in a group a mental health group?
Yes. And
Hmm.
so, in particular, we use Assist 77, which is a group of, most of them are either current or former police, fire, EMS dispatchers. And I've also got, like, so we have staff here that's on Assist 77.
What does the
So
677 mean, Perry? I didn't understand that.
it's Assist 77, Assist,
Oh, assist, and
Assist
they're
77. So Summit County, the code for Summit County is 77. So
oh, I see.
Assist 77, and so this is a Summit County based group, and again, it's current or former police officers, firefighters, medics, mental health professionals that are specifically designated to come and help with like a critical incident, and so that's primarily the group that I'll use. Because we're
Good.
affiliated with them. I have staff that's on that. Our peer support people here are on that, so
Hmm.
they can go to another department. Again, it may be more comfortable for them to have an outside group come in,
I get that.
at times. And so, if we recognize that there's been an incident that we feel is likely that somebody could have an issue coming out of, we'll bring them in and set it up. It's voluntary. We don't make staff go to that,
Hmm.
but we it's we let them know it's
There.
confidential. We set it up and it's available. So
Wonderful.
even if there's two people that show up, so be it.
It's okay.
We're gonna set it up and run through it. So
Yeah, I mean, that's wonderful. And it's there. That's what counts. So you have, at least where you're at, you have all like the edges covered. In your own experience, has any of this helped you, or being such a kind of a pioneer for the mental health side, how does it benefit you? How have you found overall balance from it? Assuming you have.
I mean, again, I think as the chief, your concerns grow, right? You have a broader area of concerns with your agency. It's not just about you anymore.
Right.
It is in a sense that you're responsible for everybody and all their interactions with your community. So
Yeah.
again, it goes back to training and well-being. The better my staff is, the better I'm going to be, the less stress I'm going to have. If they're healthy and
Right.
happy and they're making the citizens healthy and happy, I'm going to be healthier and happier, right? So, I mean,
Right.
it really kind of all umbrellas
It's good.
together.
And it sounds like you practice what you preach, because you mentioned you went to the equine therapy. It sounds like you might have done the tactical stretching. So it appears that you are not just someone who puts these in place, but the people you work with see you actually doing it too, which I think
Yeah,
is a good
I try.
model.
Yeah. And,
Good.
and, the training side of stuff too, maybe something that maybe hasn't come up with other people you've talked to. But again, going back to I'm really big on training. It really affects a
I
lot,
love it.
affects your culture, your
Yes.
agency. Like we introduced jujitsu to staff here, which is it's now mandatory. We do it every year in service training. We're trying to figure out ways to introduce it in between too to keep up on this stuff. But
Yeah.
one thing that I found too is that it's a very unique job. Police. Where you may have to physically control people. You're taking people's freedom away. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of
Intense.
responsibility and stress. And so with that, as we were looking for ways to build staff confidence when they do have to go hands on with somebody, whether it's an arrest or whether they have to subdue somebody that's in a crisis that could be either harming themselves or
Mhm.
potential danger to other people.
Yeah.
We have to do it. It's not the same as if you're in a street fight. We have to be able to do that, but with limit any potential harm to
And
the person.
and keep in
You
your
know,
head when you're doing it. You have to stay in your logic brain while you're doing this.
and so those skills that the officers are learning with jiu-jitsu, I think are going to be beneficial long run with them, because again, they're
Agreed.
going to be more comfortable, more confident if they have to go
Mhm.
hands on. They're learning techniques that to control people without causing damage,
Yes.
to themselves and to the people they're dealing with, which is ultimately the goal. It's not a street
Yes.
fight. When you see, two or three officers on a person, it's because we're trying to control them without causing, damage. At
Exactly.
least that's what the goal should be.
That's
So
it.
we're
Yeah.
trying to hit it from a bunch of different angles.
You've mentioned so many already. It almost sounds like I want to go there and get all the training. Or you've got my mind spinning about ways that on the mental health side we can offer more to I don't know if you call it a precinct like yours or your county that do all this. You got me going. You're going to hear I might have to be hitting Mallory up for some ideas.
We are, I tell you, we are. I can't speak for other counties. Both agencies I work for are in Summit County. I mean, I've worked with people on different task forces of other counties, but I can tell you we do have, like with Assist 77, the Blue
Mhm.
Coats, and the Safety Forces Support Center. Those are all Summit County based organizations. And I'm more than
Mhm.
happy to send you links. Matter of fact, I'd be more than
I would
happy to.
love that.
There's some great people that might be willing to talk to you about specifically some stuff. I didn't create these
Please.
organizations. I'm just taking advantage of their existence, and what they do.
And I so
So,
appreciate that you're doing that for your community, for this as a pilot for yourself, for your it's not hard on the front end to do that. I shouldn't say it's not hard. It's time consuming, but it's probably paying off for you on the tail end that you're putting this energy in. Can't imagine it hasn't.
well, and you may not. Here's the thing: is with that type of payoff, you may never know, right? As far as did you prevent somebody from retiring, 10 years early on a disability?
Mhm.
You may
Right.
not know that. You just, a lot of times you just hope that the work's paying off and people are
Right.
healthier and happier, because you may not, there may be things that
You may
you
not
just
measure it.
can't see. Yes.
Right.
So
But
it's not going
I
to hurt.
don't doubt.
Hey, it's not going to
It's
hurt
what?
though, right? I mean, it's not going to hurt anything. So, I mean, that.
No. No. Nothing you've mentioned. It's all completely things that would help any human. And if it helps somebody whose job has an extra level of stress to me it's a no-brainer.
We
Um
got to figure you're
if
going on. How many people, how many critical incidents, like normal people, like when I say normal, I mean like citizens, like
yeah.
non law enforcement or military, or even firefighters or medics,
Mhm.
how many critical incidents in a lifetime? A couple? Like I'm talking like
Maybe. Right.
you know what I mean? Like critical, like
Yeah.
something you consider a serious trauma, like, or
Yeah.
potential traumatic incident. A couple, I would have to tell you that, like, uh, and again, it might range depending on what department you work for,
Mhm.
but even a small to medium department, you're probably dealing with a couple hundred of those in your career. Um,
Yeah.
you
That's a
know,
lot.
I can't even tell you. I don't even remember. I have to think about stuff to remind myself because again, you move on to the next thing. But I think with police and firefighters and EMS, sometimes your batteries are never fully recharged. You know what I mean? Because you're on that constant like roller coaster, and you just go from one thing to the next, and you kind of you bounce back and forth.
Yeah.
And so for these professions, I think it's even more important. I think it's important for everyone, right? Whether you're a school teacher, whether you're a nurse,
Mhm.
it's important for everybody. Mental health and physical health
Right.
and well-being. But for these jobs, I think they can really take a toll over a 20, 30
Yes.
year career.
It's almost like you're exposed to mini traumas. And I mentioned that fight or flight earlier because we're not supposed to stay in that. And your job is kind of built on that to some extent. And then you're in it and you're in those visuals and the sensory. So if you don't take care of yourself, I could see, as I've heard, it can have a big impact. You push it down. I love the battery example. Eventually the battery's going to go too low. It's not going to
Yeah.
work. That was a good example of that. If somebody wants to get help and they hear this, but maybe this is not something they're a first responder, but it's not in their world, where do they start looking that might be sympathetic to police officers or first responders? Where would they go?
I mean, again, I can really only speak towards like Summit County because that's where I'm
Sure.
based. But I mean, we try and promote and make sure the staff is aware of like the Assist 77, Safety Forces Support Center. The groups that I've already mentioned, because
Yeah.
they don't have to go through the department. That's a nice thing too.
Okay.
Is we're more than happy, and we'll set up those critical incident uh, debriefs for that. And again, if somebody wants to show up, they show up. It's there. We've done it, but they don't have to. That they can contact these groups on their own too.
Okay,
and
that's good to
fix your
know.
problem. So, let's say they just, they're not comfortable. They don't want anybody at work
Hmm.
to see them show up at, at this event,
Right.
or, they certainly can reach out to those groups themselves. And I'm sure there's got to be entities in other counties throughout the state,
Has to be.
that are doing similar things. I
Okay.
think that our county's definitely got some phenomenal people that are. I know some of the volunteers and some of the people that are doing it, and
Yeah.
they're really good people, and their hearts in it, and so. But I'm sure that you got the same thing other places.
So they can kind of look, and we'll put these in the show notes later. There's some just general organizations that might be active, and even if they're not in their area, they will have crisis help or other kind of mental health support outside of the traditional mental health you can get in any community,
Absolutely. Yes, and
potentially.
these are geared towards safety forces, which is
Okay.
nice too, because again, it is a little different. We're all people, but the,
Oh,
the the stuff that we deal with is different in the sense of that, you may have been involved in a domestic with your spouse, or you may have, as a child, seen your parents arguing. But the police officers and are going to, they're not just dealing with it at home. They're responding to everybody's domestics and and so it is a little bit different, the stuff that you're seeing on a regular basis and dealing with. So it's
great.
nice to have people that are specifically
Hmm.
attuned to knowing that.
And that's what I'm learning on this journey in discovering this is I'm also finding there are mental health practitioners that are focusing on this as their sole area because it's such a wide open, unique population. So it hopefully that is growing too, so people can find providers who get it
Well,
and work
and
with other
that's
people.
getting it, because you may hear a police officer, firefighter, paramedic, and I'm sure the same thing happens with school teachers, like where you develop a sense of humor that may come across jaded to somebody else.
Right,
But
right,
if you're dealing with like kindergartners all day long, you may find humor in something that if out of context, somebody might go,
right,
wow. But
right.
but I think sometimes that's a way for people to, in those situations. Again, every profession probably has it, but it's just the way you deal with it.
Oh
Because
yeah,
again, otherwise it can really have an impact on you.
yeah,
So
yeah. We say you're not taking it lightly; we're just holding it lightly, and
yeah.
that makes it the brevity and the
And
levity
you
of it.
probably in your field, you probably
Oh,
have,
you have to.
and I think that's just human nature. It's a way you kind of diffuse, what I mean, sometimes very
Hmm.
serious topics.
That's it. We laugh in my sessions all the time, and unless it's a really, really, really tough day, we're going to find humor along
Yeah.
this path. I have a little side question, and I don't know that it was captured here, but I'm always curious about this when I talk with. I love that you said safety forces, first responders, and then we'll get you off to do your important job. You chose this job. And you used to, like you said, you used to do the whatever you call it. We call it here being in the trenches. You weren't always in your office there. Were you a person who naturally had like a lower fight or flight kind of amygdala response, or did it get calm over years, or did you find that you struggled with it being in a job where there's constant crisis? Because you have that roaring up in you regularly, and I'm always curious what came first.
I'll be honest. I think I've always been able to, and again, whether it was the healthiest thing long run, but I've been able to cope fairly well with stuff. I
Hmm.
find that probably because you didn't talk about certain things, but I find that things bother me more now, like from like years ago, if I think about a case or a call,
Right.
but when I was going through it, and again, nothing like major, but like I
Hmm.
find that like going back and revisiting it, it tends to bother me more now if I think about like, a certain case or
Yeah,
an
makes sense.
accident scene I was on or whatever. I personally, I think I fared pretty well throughout my career as far as mental
Yeah,
health and physical health.
good.
And I've always tried to stay active though, like,
Hmm.
like physically. And I do think personal feelings, I think that they go hand in hand to some degree,
They
the
do.
physical and mental health.
Yeah,
And
they
so
do.
I've had outlets throughout my career where again,
Yeah.
I actively lift weights, and I find if I don't do that, I don't cope as well at work and stuff like that. So for
Hmm.
me, I have to try and get to the gym a certain amount of times a week,
Okay.
and it benefits me. I think I've adapted fairly well. Again, I'm sure I've had my traumas from different calls and stuff like that. I will tell you that I worry for the future generations, because I think that what I see in younger people, just in society in general, I don't know if we're instilling kids with coping skills. And so these kids also we have to fill these law enforcement, these firefighters, these EMS jobs. And so because I know that even for people that are well adjusted and have coping skills, these jobs can be tough. Hardened police officers can have a call that they go on that are just, they're traumatic for them. And
that's why we're talking.
Worry that at least what I've seen, I don't know if I'm using the right terminology, but I feel like the people aren't developing the coping skills for life at a younger age, I feel like. And so I worry that especially the roles for jobs that you have to be able to you can't you have to be able to, you have to go into that, you have to kind of control that and be able to deal with situations at hand.
Yes.
I worry about issues down the road. We're already having trouble filling positions in police work and firefighters and medics, and I worry that that's going to get worse for multiple reasons. That even people that do think they want to do it maybe aren't going to be able to do it,
right,
because they're not going to be able to cope with some of the stuff that we see on a regular basis.
That's a salient point, and we do see that here. I don't know. We could argue what that's from, but there's a bit of a distress tolerance that's missing in some people, which is what you're referring to. And that's what the coping skills help you with. So maybe the thing you're doing is going to help those who aren't quite ready get more support. Because you might be right.
Yeah. I mean, again, give them as many tools we can give them, when they get here. And that's what we hope for. Again, I hope that staff here is happy and healthy. And again, for me, that makes healthy staffs, healthy community.
Helps you too. Yeah, so. And everybody. And it sounds like, going back to the earlier thing we talked about, is something in you was already kind of predisposed to do well in this position. You didn't come into it as the wrong personality type and worked through it. You kind of already had that temperament, and then you've worked on it. It's not accidental either. You've done the prevention and the self-care and the outlets.
Yeah, and I think it's a little bit of everything. Again, it's not one particular thing.
No, it always fascinates me, because we deal with anxiety here all the time. And I'm like, how do you guys do it? How do you people that get out there handle that anxiety that it can be so much? But you found what works for you and for your team and for your staff.
And not everything's going to work for everybody. So we just try and give them a little bit of some tools, right? Tools for the tool belt, we call it.
I love it. I'm already brainstorming more tools. I'm going to have you stay on the call for a minute, but I'm going to end our call. And thank you for your time. You're a busy human out there keeping people safe, and I appreciate your insight. It was very helpful for me and probably anyone listening.
Great. Thanks. I appreciate you talking to me.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Mental Health Spotlight podcast, helping you hold hope on your recovery path.